Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in this afternoon. Dr. Goenka, thank you for taking your time out and speaking with us. We're, of course, speaking at a time when the last 1 year was, of course, a tough one for automakers dealing with COVID and, of course, a lot of supply chain issues as well. I want to first begin by asking you about where from here for the auto industry, and the kind of things that we had heard at one point of time was that the demand that we had seen post the lockdown easing was a pent-up demand. Are we still in pent-up demand, or do you see things getting better from here? Or is it going to be the other way around, given the fact that we have a second wave of COVID?
I think the question of pent-up demand should be put behind us now. We have been talking about that for the last 4 months, and every month the industry is showing growth over the last year. And I don't think anybody in the industry believes that we are still in the pent-up demand phase. If you look at the growth that industry has had after the first 4 months of very poor sales because of lockdown, we have grown almost 20% average from the months of August till February. And you cannot really have pent-up demand for so long. So I am confident, and other panelists can also give their view later, but I'm confident that we are in real growth phase and not in demand. And every automaker currently is struggling for capacity, and we could have grown more if we did not have supply constraints.
You know, since we're talking about the next decade, many say would perhaps be for EVs, but on the other hand, the big concern, of course, is on electric vehicles, is on infrastructure. Dr. Goenka, you have had a very long experience in the auto industry. You're a veteran, if I could put it like that. At a time like this, what is the problem? Are there not enough takers in terms of consumers for electric vehicles, or do we not have enough infrastructure? And that seems to be the real issue. Because if you look at, for example, Bhavesh Agarwal of Ola, look at the kind of capacities that he's talking about creating. On the other hand, we have the existing players who are still shying away.
Well, EVs have taken a little longer in India to take off. But I think the time has now come for us to see that inflection point. There are 2 or 3 things that are working for us. First of all, the government of India has given significant incentive for electric vehicles to become affordable to the consumers. And today, many segments of electric vehicles, such as last mile connectivity, two-wheelers, even buses in some cases, are commercially viable. So I think at least in that segment, the electric vehicles are here to take off. Now, a lot gets talked about infrastructure. Yes, infrastructure is a concern, but I don't think that right now we can blame infrastructure for the reason of slow growth of electric vehicles. There is enough around for us to grow a lot more than where we are today before we worry about infrastructure, that is charging infrastructure. And see, it's a chicken and egg. Infrastructure cannot but just be put in place when there are no vehicles to charge. And it's going to happen automatically with time. So I'm less concerned about infrastructure. My bigger concern is that the consumers have to warm up to electric vehicles. It's a new technology, and there is always some apprehension on using new technology. But I think enough vehicles are on the road from Mahindra to demonstrate that electric vehicles are not technology that you need to be concerned about. There is no problem in terms of maintenance, no problem in terms of breakdown, no problems in terms of getting your daily driving done. And if the aggregators, such as Ola, Uber, adopt to electric vehicles, I think the EVs can grow very rapidly, at least in the shared mobility and in the last mile connectivity space. But of course, from the government side, some thrust on charging infrastructure will be good. Government is trying, but not succeeded very well yet. A lot of work is happening, and a little bit in terms of financing, where the financing cost sometimes becomes exorbitant.
Dr. Goenka, I have 3 very eminent panelists with me here as well, and I will be talking to them in a great deal about the EV policy, the charging infrastructure, some of the challenges. But before I take it on with them, I want to understand from you. We're of course speaking at a time when the government has just unveiled the scrappage policy as well. But one of the contentious issues in my conversation with Mr. R.C. Bhargav as well of Maruti Suzuki, he said that why should I give 5% discounts at a time when the government is has put out a policy in place for doing away with unfit vehicles. Where is the auto sector with respect to that?
See, the question of discount is basically about market competitiveness. And all automakers give whatever discount they're able to give. They can justify to balance the volume and financial performance. And while for scrappers policy, I'm sure that automakers will go a little bit sort of stretch themselves. But I really doubt that anybody will have an extra 5% to give beyond what they normally give for a discount for a vehicle. You have to keep in mind that the PBIT for most automakers in the 6-7% range. And if the profit margin is 6-7% range, how do you give a 5% discount for scrappers policy? But all the same, I think the attempt that has been made by the government of India, the effort that has been put in, especially I am really thankful to Mr. Gadkari for really putting a tremendous amount of trust behind the scrappers policy. I think it's going to go a long ways in terms of doing three things simultaneously, all positive. One is to have cleaner vehicles on the road. Because the vehicle that will be taken off the road will be emitting 4 to 5 times at least as much pollution as new vehicles. Second is to have less fuel consumption. That means less crude oil import, which is again one of the big thrusts that Mr. Gadkari has had for the scrappers policy. And third is, of course, give some impetus to growth for the industry and whatever it might be, but it's going to certainly increase the new vehicle sales, and that's good for everyone. So overall, I think it's a win-win-win proposition. We'll have to see how it pans out in terms of what the state governments are able to do, what the automakers are able to do, and what the central government is able to do.
So I'm going to take that question with Mr. Srivastav as well. We're talking about India's largest car maker. Do you have 5% discounts to give and roll out? While on one hand, the government says, and Mr. Goenka has also said that it's a win-win-win, but can the automakers afford to give that kind of discounts?
Yeah, so I think we have to look at this scrappage policy in a much wider perspective than just a discount or incentive for scrapping old vehicles. First of all, and as Dr. Goenka rightly pointed out, scrappage policy does help on a lot of fronts, including the import bill, the better fuel efficiency of new cars, the lesser emission, so it helps the environment as well. And if vehicles which are unfit are they're off the roads, surely is going to add safety as well as much lesser pollution. In that sense, it also would be, because scrapping a vehicle is not an easy thing. You need to have real technical investments for doing proper scrappage. So I think this would also lead to investments in the scrapping industry. Also, you can recycle the material. So I think, generally speaking, and this is a thing from an Indian perspective, I can say that the starting point is very important. So maybe today it is 20 years. You could say it could have been lower. So we would, going forward, probably the industry will see a tweaking of those. And of course, you can always debate whether 5% is possible or not. I think with the current profitability levels, it might be a little difficult, yes.
Mr. Garg, if I can come to you. Last year was the year of full of challenges. It's not like that the challenges are over, because you have rising input costs on one hand, and of course the semiconductor shortage on the other hand. Talk to us about how do you plan to navigate through these challenges in the entire auto sector as a whole. For example, Maruti has undertaken the second price hike in the year 2021. Where from here?
Yeah, so I think this is an issue which we all have been grappling with. If you see, like Dr. Goenka also said, I believe that last 7 months of continuous growth has given us a lot of optimism. And we are very proud that, we have been able to contribute to kind of economic revival post-COVID, because there was so much anxiety that was going to happen about the GDP. So to that extent, I think auto industry has played its part. Yes, in terms of challenges, frankly speaking, while the costs have gone up, I think all of us have always endeavored how to really optimize, how to make sure that we are able to reduce the costs in whatever way possible. And I can talk about my company, and when I talk to my colleague in production and supply chain, they're always trying to really hold on to the cost. So whatever the material cost goes up, we try as much to really to reduce it, because ultimately it is all about really giving value to the customer.
Also, because India is such a price-sensitive market as well. We have here with us three of the top 3 in fact, auto players from last year, and also the big challenger. Mr. Chaba, if I can come to you and ask you, what's been the secret sauce? You've been in the Indian market for the last 2 years. What do you think has really worked for the company?
I think it's difficult to describe one thing, but the overall, I would say our pillars of differentiation have helped us, whether it be community service, to diversity, to technology, and customer experience. I think in all the 4 pillars, we have tried to do things in a different way. Our products have been leading in their segments on technology. We can argue who brought the first connected car, but we were together almost. Connected car, EV car, and Gloucester Autonomous Level 1, the guys are loving technology. You asked one question to Dr. Goenka about EV. From consumer side, frankly, my humble opinion is consumers are ready to absorb right now, provided you can give them good, compelling products. ZS EV, this month will be selling 300 cars a month in 7-8 cities, which is costing 24 lakhs of rupees. You know, so guys are buying. So choice is not there in my opinion. So more and more players will be coming, including from co-panelists, the cars would be coming in future, I'm sure. So this market is there to expand. So overall, you know, one thing which I keep saying, and I was talking to Yale students day before yesterday about our strategy. I said, listen, in a market when you have Maruti and Hyundai 70% market share, and in my humble opinion, most of the Western players have not succeeded that much. So you need to do things in a different way, and that's what we try to do.
You know, while we're talking about doing things in a different way, the next decade, many say, could be that of EVs. In fact, I asked that question from Dr. Goenka as well. But India's largest car maker is not doing anything on EVs. Why is that?
Yes, so I think this is a question which is often asked to us. It's not true that we are doing nothing about it. Of course, I'm not here to reveal future product plans for Maruti Suzuki. But I can tell you that currently, you see worldwide, the penetration of EVs is just around 2% or so, even in very advanced countries, except I think Norway and Netherlands, where it is substantial penetration. And there are 3 main reasons why we find EVs at the moment are not finding that traction. 300 vehicles is fine, but we are looking at probably a larger percentage in a market which is probably expected to be about 6 million in the next 10 years. So first is that the cost of acquisition of the EVs is pretty high at the moment, and that's largely because the battery costs are very high. Remember, battery cost is about 50-55% of the cost of EV. And we haven't seen that reduction in battery costs as we anticipated. Second is the infrastructure cost, infrastructure itself, the ecosystem. And I was listening to Dr. Goenka when he said that you must have vehicles before you have infrastructure. Right. I think they will go together. In that sense, he's right. But at the moment, the infrastructure is an issue. You know, in advanced countries like Japan, US, 85 to 88% of the vehicles are parked at the same spot every night. In India, it is just the reverse. And
you're struggling in Vasant Kunj as well.
Yes, so I struggle in Vasant Kunj, and as soon as I enter and wherever slot I find, I immediately park, and then I move off before I, click on the remote for closing the van. Because otherwise the guys come out and say, "Yaar, aapne yahan kyun park kar diya?" You know, that sort of thing. The third thing, obviously, is the range anxiety which the consumers have. So right now, if you have batteries which have got higher ratings, then obviously they are heavier and more expensive. Right. So these 3 reasons, and we are looking for a sustainable, practical, and business-wise a practical solution. And I think it will come. And remember, we are maybe talking not of electric vehicles as much as electrification of vehicles.
So allow me to come in on that.
Yes.
And let me take that question with Mr. Garg as well. Sir is talking about sustainable, practical solution. I'm sure those are the considerations that Bhavesh Agarwal of Ola also made when he thought about putting up that factory. And he's talking about rolling out electric vehicles and batteries at a much faster pace. So what's stopping all you guys?
So Ruchi, we have a slightly different perspective on this. And in fact, as you know, that our parent company, HMC, is really looking at mobility in a much more different way. So of course, in India also, and with all due respect to MG, we were the first ones, we launched the EV in 2019 as Kona. We are very excited by the hydrogen mission which has been launched in this budget, because we are already selling hydrogen fuel cell EVs in Korea and US, and we feel that we are already doing a feasibility in India. So we are really looking at a zero emission mobility going forward. So we feel that somebody has to take a lead in terms of technology. And I agree with Dr. Goenka that once OEMs bring in cars, the infrastructure probably will, automatically follow. So yes, but it will not be immediate. Probably this is still time. So a lot of coexistence will happen between IC and EVs and hydrogen. And then yes, ultimately we all know that we have to move towards probably
You
a
also,
much higher
I
use,
remember
yeah.
having a chat with you, and you also said that if you give an electric vehicle for 25 lakh rupees, I don't think there will be enough takers in India for that. But if you give an electric vehicle in 10 lakh rupees, there will be many, many consumers.
Yes, that's very important. Like he mentioned that 300 EVs a month, but then we are selling 3 lakh cars a month. So as a percentage, it is still very less. So like we said, we have to come into the mass market so that more and more consumers can buy. And I think then the real stuff will come.
So let's ask Mr. Chaba also, and then I'll come to you. Mr.
Yeah.
Chaba, you're the master of doing things differently. What is it that the Indian auto industry needs to do with respect to electric vehicles? Your co-panelists are saying it's a chicken and egg situation. You don't know what's going to come first. Should it be cars or should it be the interest from consumers?
So I think it's a combination of everything, and let's remember the evolution has started, you can't stop it, okay? Because it's not about India, it's about the global climate, it's about countries joining the Paris Agreement, agreeing to reduce the emissions, Indian government talking about CAFE norms, fuel efficiency norms, and consumers' interest globally. Right? So it's a global phenomena. There is a lag in India, okay, which happens typically. But Indian consumers also want the best, and they also want to have the same. I don't think so anybody is arguing that it won't happen. It's a question of the cadence of the launches, right? So now we have started, like Mahindra started obviously at a smaller scale, at a smaller price point, some cars, fleet cars and things like that. We started at the top, number is very small, but the number is good. If I give you a perspective, the 2 years back, the whole market in India was 2,000 units. Last year it was 6,000, and this year probably is going to be 12 to 15,000, which as a percentage to whole industry is nothing. But it's a good number, right? So I think number of players like leaders like Hyundai and Maruti, when they start coming with a car less than 10 lakhs, or even some global players, if they bring cars for less than 10 lakhs, the numbers are going to be in hundreds of thousands. And that would happen, So it's a journey which has started. And obviously nobody can reveal you the plans, product plans, as Shashank said, but I'm sure everybody is working. And this is inevitable.
Srivastava is itching to come in on that.
No, I was just wanted to respond to a couple of points being made here, which is, you cannot deny that, yes, the process has started. Maybe the long term finally is about EVs. But as Tarun said, we have to live with those ICE vehicles for a long time and coexist. In fact, one of the things why industry observers have gone wrong on this front is because the powertrain cost for the ICE engine, which is about $9,000 in US, expected to go up, while the powertrain cost for EV is expected to come down. Once they cross, that's the point of inflection when you will see a sudden increase. And earlier it was thought that that point of inflection will be 2024. But now the estimates are a little longer. Now what happens then? So even if you look at CAGRs of 6% from 2020 up to 2030, we'll probably make 70 million cars in India, and 70 million, probably 63% will still be ICE engines. So yes, it will increase from 300 to 12,000 to 15,000 to maybe 6 million. But 64 million will still be ICE, and we are therefore talking of hybridization and using fuels which are which is very environment friendly. For example, CNG, or even other choices, which some of it was referred by Tarun. So I think we need to look at that and continuously monitor what is that which will bring the powertrain costs significantly lower for EVs. That's the point which we need to debate.
Right. Let me give the last word on that panel to Dr. Goenka. Dr. Goenka, look at where Tesla is. Nobody calls it an auto company anymore. Everybody refers to it as a technology company. Do you think part of the problem lies with the thinking of the auto industry in itself?
There is, frankly, very little difference in the approach that the traditional legacy auto company have towards electric vehicles today. They did get a late start, I would agree. But today, there is no difference in the way the legacy auto companies are approaching electric vehicles compared to what Tesla may be doing. For Tesla, of course, electric vehicle is the only business, and therefore they would completely 100% work on that. For other automakers, they have to continue with the ICE engine. As all the panelists have said, the ICE engines are not about dead. It will be a long time before ICE engines are not relevant for our industry. Even if the electric vehicles double every year, it will be at least 10 years before electric vehicles take over majority of from ICE engine. But if you look at the technology that is going into electric vehicles, it is in number one in the powertrain. Powertrain means battery, the motor, the power electronics, the charging system, and every company that's working electric vehicle is doing as much for this technology as anybody else. Okay. The second technology that goes in is not unique to electric vehicles. That is about connectivity and the ADAS, which is happening in ICE engine also in equal measure. Maybe it doesn't get noticed as much coming from the legacy auto companies as it may get noticed coming from EV only companies. But I would really vehemently say that the legacy companies are doing as much for technology for electric vehicles or otherwise as any electric vehicle companies do.
Okay, all right. On that note, gentlemen, appreciate you all taking your time out and speaking with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.